go, sir.
We're on.
Do you like reading today?
I am a teacher and a writer, and Jamie is a local artist. And we're here to present our Nred Nrite presentation, which is Sniders and Skeels and AK Africanized Wasps, oh my. And it's about the creative process and the journey that's going on with this project that Jamie and I are engaged in. And so, actually, Jamie, can I have one of those? Because I can sure. I'm going to start this because a lot of what Sandra asked me to do, Sandra asked me to do was talk about the creative project's process and not just the project that we're engaged in. So I was trying to figure out a way to bring all of that together. And so, in your handout, I've given you a packet. I want to read the beginning of this restaurant review that was written by Pete Wells in 2015 that I think is one of the most creative restaurant reviews I've ever read. Normally, when you read restaurant reviews, you're thinking it's going to be a pretty standard review. They're going to tell you about the food. It's pretty straightforward. There's not going to be any voice or tone. They're going to tell you whether or not they liked it and what was wrong or what was good about it. But not Pete Wells. And after reading this, I realized that he does this with a lot of his restaurant reviews. So it starts off like this. This is a restaurant review of Javelina, which is a Tex-Mex place in Gramercy Park, New York City. And he starts off by saying, I like Texans. I love their food and their music and their boots. I admire their ability to tame landscapes that are hostile to human life. I respect how quick they are to stick up for their state and its culture. In fact, I might be slightly afraid of Texans. I have no desire to mess with them. I can read the bumper stickers. Reviewing Javelina, which built itself as New York's finest authentic Tex-Mex restaurant, may have presented me with an unusual conflict of interest. My interest in telling the truth about this establishment could come into conflict with my interest in not having my butt kicked by angry Texans. What if something I didn't like at Javelina turned out to be the very thing that Texans most loved about authentic Tex-Mex? It may get in the way of my earnest desire for my next trip to Texas to be a safe and peaceful one. And lucky for me, I have only good things to say about Javelina. So far, so good. And then it quickly goes south in this next paragraph. Javelina, no pun intended, near Union Square is a godsend for anybody who loves to eat before 6 p.m. or after 9:30 p.m. Since opening 2 months ago, the restaurant has talked up so much in the press that those are usually the only reservation times available, even if you book a week or two ahead. And you are starting to get the sense that he didn't like the fact that he had to do that. You may worry that those hours in the dining room would be depressingly quiet, but that's not the case. Javelina's 58 seats always seem to be taken by large groups of people shouting with youthful animation. It always sounds as if somebody were telling a woman at the far end of the table that he had just found $1,000 under the menu, and the woman was shouting back that Ryan Gosling had just texted and he's coming to the restaurant like in 5 minutes. How anybody gets drunk enough to act this way is one of several fun Javelina mysteries to keep you entertained. Fresh or frozen, the margaritas have a slight chemical taste that I was thankful for because it tended to keep my own alcohol intake to near Mormon levels. I also stayed alert and sober when faced with a Tijuana Manhattan made with tequila in place of whiskey and served on a rocks glass with no ice at all, even though it was the temperature of a freshly killed snake. While bartenders everywhere have become insufferable bores on the subject of ice and proper shaking techniques, the ones at Javelina are refreshingly free of such pretension. If you were the bartender there, I think you'd suddenly realize that you were being attacked. Even the water is sometimes served at room temperature. One night, the bar made a Paloma in a pint glass, while a woman at my table got her Paloma in a much smaller glass. Everyone knows that women drink less than men, so we appreciated the thoughtfulness. To avoid making her self-conscious, I suppose, the restaurant even charged us both the same amount, $13. And at most restaurants, you are served what you are asked for so routinely that your eyes glaze over with boredom. Javelina does not fall into the trap of dull predictability. One night after I left, I realized the guacamole I'd ordered had never arrived. It's not every restaurant that gives you something to think about on your way home. Meanwhile, people at the next table were presented with a dish they insisted they hadn't asked for. You didn't order brisket? The server asked, keeping a playful spirit. So I just want to stop right there. And one of the reasons I started off with that is because of the nature of the creativity. That is a type of restaurant review I have never read before. Where did that particular author come up with the idea to invest this seemingly mundane road experience with that much of his personality? How did he get away with it without people attacking him constantly? New York City, I know, is big, but they know who he is. They know who he works for. And where did he grab all of these different elements and put it into his particular work? So that's where I wanted to start. There are a lot of stereotypes and assumptions made about art and artists and creative people and creativity in general. I think the biggest one that is just not true is that the creative person is this, or that creativity is like this foggy netherworld where people just sort of grasp these crazy ideas out of nowhere and go like, oh, I created something amazing and it's wonderful and beautiful, and it happens immediately. And that those people are particularly special, that they have to, oh, you're talking to me, okay, yes. Oh, you, okay, you are, yes. That they have some sort of, Grecian connection to a muse that's going to just give it to them, and that's where they get these ideas. And well, as a creative person, you know that that's just not at all true.
It's totally true.
Okay, so no. It's true in John's case, and apparently in Jamie's case. There's also the misnomer that, or the fallacy that creativity can't be learned. That it is a trait that somebody is born with, and they're immediately good at it, and they're just going to be good for the rest of their lives and get better and better. That creative people, filmmakers and artists and writers and musicians, are flaky, or that they're damaged, they have psychological problems, or they have alcoholism or drug issues or schizophrenia. And yes, there are plenty of stories of that out there, but there are also plenty of businessmen and politicians and teachers and people who exist in a non-creative world who also are alcoholics and drug abusers and schizophrenics and have mental health issues. But for some reason, we've always gone, because of the right-brainedness and the difference of what creativity brings, the ability to draw all of those disparate elements in and to create something new, people automatically consider them weird or unusual. And I will admit that there are plenty of people who are artists who rely on that as maybe a marketing point. They purposely play up their weirdness, they purposely play up their oddness. Salvador Dali is the first one that comes to mind. And there are plenty of artists, Sylvia Plath, Edgar Allan Poe, who's the other guy that I had down here? Van Gogh, who were ill. They were mentally ill, but they just happened to be in that particular area. And I think that is one of the biggest lies that people tell themselves about creativity. It's really easy and convenient for you to do that, because you can say, oh, I don't have to be creative now. It's not natural to me, it wasn't in my family, this is not something that normal people do, and I'm a normal person. I don't have mental illness, so I can't be creative. I'm not drinking constantly, so I can't be creative. It's just not true. Creativity is just like anything else. You have an innate desire and you have practice and failure. That's all it is. I want to do this thing, whatever it is, and I'm going to keep on hacking away at it until I get it right, or until I get it into a shape that I am happy with. And so that's where I wanted to come from with this particular project. I don't know if you can see that, which is the Encyclopedia Bizarre. That's, yeah, okay, good, I spelled correctly. It's got a subtitle, I won't read you the whole thing. Because I started this project 9 years ago, and with such enthusiasm. In fact, when I told my daughters that I was coming here, they're now grown, and they said, you're still talking about that? You were talking about that when I was 9. And the other one said, yeah, I was 7. And then the grown one who's away said, I was 13. I was like, okay, yeah. Because I got invested in it, and I was talking about it constantly, and then I dropped it. And there was a specific reason why, and that was one of the failures. So in thinking about the way that creativity works, and thinking about this particular talk that I was going to give, I realized that the inspiration, other than wanting to do something creative, came from 3 different works. One of them was a book review of a book that I can't remember, or I couldn't until a couple of days ago. Another one is, well, here's a common thread, Ambrose Bierce's Devil's Dictionary, which I use in my classes, which I teach all the time, which also has its roots in Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language. And then the third one is a book by John Hodgman. So for those of you unfamiliar with John Hodgman, you might recognize him when I put him up here on the screen. I've got about a 3-minute clip that I want to play where he goes into the character of one of the books that he wrote that inspired what I wanted to do with this. And then he starts talking about his creative process. So hopefully this will work. This is the, John Hodgman was on The Daily Show a lot, and he was the PC guy in the Mac and PC commercials with Judge Sing Long.
Benjamin Franklin said, nothing is certain in life except death and taxes. But you may not realize that he said that in 1989 because he had his brain preserved. And I still have brain cut, forged by Paul Revere, and remained alive until 1993 when Jerry Lewis, who had purchased the brain, left the brain cut on the top of his navigator, and then the brain cut fell off. And that was the end of Benjamin Franklin, finally. Facts are boring. People will believe in a compelling story more than they'll believe in a dull fact. And this can be used, obviously, for good or for ill. I try to hit it straight down the middle, for kill. You have to play on what Stephen Colbert coined as truthiness. That feeling of, I want to believe that it is true, and it is just crazy enough to sound true. I had read books of trivia all my life and loved them. And I thought, what new can I bring to the genre of sort of junky lay reference books that you find in a bathroom or left behind in a summer house? And I said, why don't I do a book of trivia where all the trivia is fictional? So, for example, you would have a list of the 9 US presidents who had hooks for hands. No one knew that FDR had a hook for a hand because they only photographed him from the wrist up, and this book was shaped like a wheelchair. With complete world knowledge, I wanted to do 3 books, but I wanted them all to form one massive exercise in derangement. I really wanted to break 1,000 pages, because the exercise of writing fake knowledge would not be complete unless it seemed hefty and authoritative. In my first book,
It's a good logical break here because I don't want to go over. And so with that in mind, with the Devil's Dictionary in mind, I was going to read some of the excerpts from the Devil's Dictionary, but we're short on time, so you can look at them, you can keep that stuff, it's yours. And some of the stuff from Samuel Johnson's dictionary. Just to give you an idea of where Bierce came from, he described husband as a brute. He described, or defined, war as a byproduct of the arts of peace, and peace as a period of cheating between fighting. And he brought this really sarcastic, cynical worldview to things that Johnson just started off with. He also defined hash as nobody knows what hash is. It's just a really great, humorous way. And he also just made stuff up. So when I finally, I read that book review, and I've got all that swirling around in my head, and I decide I want to do something like that, except for, the book review had something to do with mythological creatures, and I thought, I'm just going to go slap a whole bunch of different creatures together and come up with a list of them, and they're going to be completely weird, and then I'm going to make the definitions, and I'm going to get somebody to illustrate it, and that's what the book is going to be. So you can look on the second page, where just a list of some of the initial creatures I came up with. A fur sign is now a cur sign. It's an angry black bear mixed with an angrier black bear. That was the first one I came up with. A ficken is a fish plus a chicken. A scricken is a scrod plus a chicken. I'll skip the scrotum one. The chowl is a cheetah mixed with an owl. There's an allocopter. There's a AK Africanized wasp, a pigat, a lepargo, a ganique, a dolokeet, a penny pasoric, a cthorda, a mulrantial, a snider, and on and on and on. One of the things that John Hodgman says is that he could come up with these crazy, stupid ideas forever and just get stuck in this loop of constantly brainstorming all this stuff and never make any forward progress in the project. And at a certain point I had to stop. And that's where the first failure came, because I didn't know any artists. And the project, as my daughters will tell you, sat basically on my computer for 9 years, to the point when I finally did meet somebody who was interested in doing the art and who could pull off the art that I had in mind. I remember I couldn't find that file, and I thought, well, and I'd already introduced the project. I was like, it's going to be great, it's going to be fantastic. And then followed it up by like, I don't know where any of that work is. It's like 8 computers ago. And then I found it, So 9 years later, I meet Jamie Bronson, who for some reason has come here from Hawaii. And he is going to explain his process in hearing this crazy stuff that I come up with and how he interprets it and puts it into these illustrations. Right?
No, I'm going to mansplain this. Okay, how do I follow James? Thank you, everybody, for clapping for James. He's an amazing speaker. I'm a hack. Okay. Now, I'm tasked with explaining how to go from his mentalness into some of the creatures I've done.
This is the one
Of course, yes, this is the one. This is previous to the feminist presentation. But I think it's pretty indicative of the patriarchy, honestly. So really, what it really involves. By the way, I was totally not interested in the project. He was lying there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No.
I forced him into it.
Yeah, totally. But why did I even say that? So. James is really, I don't know if you've read any of his work. You should definitely check out his work. The descriptions, obviously, if you can read this, the blind rake is perhaps the sneakiest, slimiest, most perverted creature in the encyclopedia. It serves no useful purpose, possesses no useful skills, and performs no useful functions. It is an entirely selfish, perverted little twist of a monster. When it is not hiding under logs or stones or logs, petrified logs. It can be found sitting shirtless on the commode looking at dirty magazines in Braille. I did neglect to put the Braille in there. Sorry about that. But I think, let's see, my background really is not necessarily in this kind of genre. I feel like Prince up here. It's not really in this genre. I do like sci-fi fantasy type stuff. I've been painting for 10 years. I do a lot of landscape stuff here, being in Virginia. I was probably kind of looking for an excuse to kind of get into that tongue-in-cheek, kind of brutal, but grounded in sarcasm, some kind of outlet there, and that's where James provided me the verbiage to be able to do that. And so, of course, I take what he gives me, and I mean, you can see this thing. It's just gross. I'm not really sure how to explain where this came from out of my brain. Really, the blind rake is basically, it's a blind Texas blind snake,
Yeah.
and a rat, a swamp rat,
Yes.
basically, and that's what, like he was saying earlier, it's basically taking two disparate, maybe not necessarily disparate things, but taking two different things and mashing them together and just making them work. And then, of course, implanting that with implanting some soldering in. What's that? Just I can do that. Okay, sweet. It's gonna be wireless next time. I want to work the room. What's that? Yeah. Do some others. So the AK Wasp. Now I don't have the projectiles, unfortunately, but go to the next one. Their cosign. This is that angry bear mixed with an angry bear. He's got some issues with, I guess, spinal bifida. I'm not really sure what that's about. Go ahead. Lepargo is a leopard and an eagle. It's really just keep scrolling through them. It's just taking these things and mashing them together. This is Maonade. So one of James's favorites, if not the favorite, and actually I really do like this one, and this is the thing too, is like, given James's descriptions, you can see not only the description of the creature, but the infusion of character, in just how he frames things as well. And so I would imagine the Maonade, that's also my favorite, honestly, the Maonade. This thing knows what's going to happen. He knows what's going to happen. He's not a fan of his fate, but he also can't escape it, which is kind of like us in dealing with Mars. I mean, we can't get off this planet quite yet. But, and then,
Maonade, interestingly enough,
yes.
The Maonade was just a side thought. I wasn't even going to put him into the project until Jamie did the Snyder and put the Maonade in there. Or you put something in there, I was like, is that a Maonade?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a Maonade. And
It
so
was the
that's how
Genesis.
that came about. You're talking about how this project came to be. It is an interplay. It is a collaboration in that way.
Yeah, and James is much better with the words. I should probably let him just continue to speak. But really, yeah, it's just the interplay, like you were saying. It's that process is back and forth. So if you have somebody that you want to work with, like he said, it took him 9 years to find somebody that he was wanting to work with that could actually pull this kind of stuff off. Hopefully, I'm pulling this off. We're still, it's in progress. Are you switching video? I love this. What don't I know about hobos?
He has a whole section on it.
Oh, okay, I guess I can see about that.
All right, so, because it's 9 o'clock, we'll just move forward here. So, after Jamie came into my life, after I found him, the project took off. He did a book cover for me for free last year, at which point I introduced him to the project, and we decided in order to get it underway that we were just going to have to move forward. And so it's gone from these ideas that are hanging out in the ether that nobody knows about, that I didn't even know about, these things that I was familiar with, into solid form, sat on the shelf, gathering dust for 9 years, to the point where we're actually putting the book together and we're putting it out. And I can't advertise the thing, but can I put it up here? Okay. So here is where, from nothing, we have this. And this is the last thing. It's only 1 minute and 23 seconds.
It's James. He's a writer. He writes horror and science fiction. Like this book, and this book, and this book. This is Jamie. He's an artist. He's done a whole bunch of cool stuff too. Like this, and this, and this. He even designed one of James's covers. Pretty cool, right? One day, James came up with an idea for an illustrated book. The concept is simple. Take two very different creatures, mash them together, and see what happens. Like, mix a squirrel with a mosquito, and you get a squirstuito. Or mix a rattlesnake and a black widow, and you get a Snyder. Together they create the book. The art would be awesome and weird. Like this, and this, and this. And the entries would be filled with cool fiction and horror stories, and science fiction stories, and post-apocalyptic stories, and references to Ambrose Bierce, Afghanistan, and mole ranchulas, and 19th century jungle explorers and such, you know, the usual stuff. So please, back our Kickstarter, and we'll send you the book.
That's it. Are we doing questions or no?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Questions? Any
Questions because I'm so great with words.
Braille poem has a real future.
Braille porn. Oh, I was like, I don't know what you said.
Because you have to use your hands. Got it.
Again, yes, it's very tactile.
So one of the things about fourth wave feminism, I talked about it was sex positive. We don't have a problem. A lot of us don't have a problem with pornography, so don't apologize for that. It's
I thought it was a funny.
yeah,
It was intersectional.
Intersectionality. That's right.
Can you put together a tick and a chicker?
Sure.
Thank you.
That'd be a ticker. Or a chick.
Also not pleasant at all. Yeah.
Make it massive. Yes.
I have a more serious question.
Okay.
Right, so two creative minds. I'm like surrounded by creative minds sometimes too, and I know that sometimes there's like, you know, butt heads about like where you have a vision maybe and you describe it, and by describing it, you already maybe have a vision of something. What happens? Did he ever come up with something where you were like, no, that's absolutely not what I wanted, or how
Would
did
you let go?
How did you
It's
talk
that.
about this?
Uh,
How do you?
Well, there was an helicopter that I really loved that idea. And Jamie was like, I don't really want to do it. I was like, all right. He's like, I did the quantity instead. I was like, sweet, that works for me. If this is going to be a partnership, it has to be.
You did see the list, right?
It's
It's like
There's
50
a lot.
creatures long. There's so many creatures too that you can't dig some. Now I'm actually still working on it because I think I have a way to do
There you
some
go.
things. And that's the thing too. Sometimes things just take a little longer to gestate. Really, but yeah, I don't think either of us is really afraid to mix anything, honestly. And that's the thing too. You have to find somebody who apparently dresses like you, works out like you, has the same length hair as you, has the same age as you. So just find that person to play off of.
But it's true. I mean, I've been in bands before, and for years and years and years. And in the collaboration, as you guys know, you're going to have to give up ideas. You're going to have to give up parts. You're going to have to take a back seat sometimes. And then just growing up and knowing that in any sort of creative project, just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's the best one. And if somebody takes it and makes it better, awesome. If they look at it and go, that's dumb, that's not going to work, you should listen to that person. There's no reason not to. And Jamie doesn't have to do this. I asked him to. So there'd be no point in me.
All work has been for free.
Yes, exactly. Yes, which is why we have the Kickstarter.
Which is
And if I were to go after him or come down on him for anything, that would just be an asshole, and I don't want to be. And I like him, and I want to make him happy. So, yes, sir.
Fascinated with what you're doing. You guys know the old game of Coot.
No.
Explain.
Well, it was a box full of parts, and you make an insect. You have a wonderful idea, go three-dimensional, sell it to the world.
You're a great game, yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called? What's it called?
It was called Coot. Cootie, and you had the legs, you had the body, you had.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
Oh, the little bubble thing.
The hybrid animal stuff, I mean, that's the fantastic idea. The hybrid animal stuff, I mean, that's mythology. That's what
And kids
you know,
go
the
right,
service
and they
is.
can make your creations all create their own.
That's a good idea. We can write that down, right? But I showed this to Ken Crampton the other week, and he said, "Oh, you've seen all this stuff online where people have photoshopped like zebra stripes onto a rhino," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I mean, this is not a brand new thing, but we're taking it like you just talked about there. It's like we're going to do it this way, and this is what we're going to create. You have a question?
Regarding the creative process, do you have any kind of roadmap or system for nurturing the creative process?
Well, it starts with innate desire and endless practice, and that's for. I mean, I knew that from being a drummer, and then when I got to guitar, and then going into writing. What I've gotten it down to now, since I'm publishing a lot, since the last time publishing, is I write 1,000 words a day until whatever it is complete, and then I go through the development and editing process. And when you get to that stage, it takes a while. You figure out what that means for yourself, how many words you can produce, and what your editing process is going to look like. And then it's like a Model T. You can actually, I can predict when I can get these particular things done, because I know I can edit 5,000 words in this amount of time. I know I can get the artwork and all these other things done. But in terms of what you need to do to develop a creative process, have the interest and start engaging. And then, of course, engage with other artists and whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, and immerse yourself in that world. And then don't be afraid to screw up. Always make mistakes. That's the best thing you could possibly do. And then go like, oh, that's not, I'm going to do a different thing. That's what I would like. I don't know if that's
You're good. That's really what it is. It's just practice, practice, practice. It's really just practice, because sometimes the innate desire isn't there. Like, he doesn't want to write 1,000 words a day necessarily, but he's going to do it. And that's what's really, you just kind of buckle down. And I was terrible when I first started, either painting or drawing. It's just that innate desire, and then even going beyond that and just saying, okay, I'm going to do this. And then eventually you get to the point where you can hammer stuff out. You're like, oh crap, I totally just drew up a new concept. And it didn't necessarily start as that little flame. It didn't necessarily have a muse, although James is my muse. You didn't necessarily have that.
I keep my clothes on.
Yeah. That's what it says. So that's the thing. You don't have to have it, but the thing is, with the creative process, when you do it, or at least I found, when I start something and I see it start to go somewhere, it's like picking up speed. It's like driving downhill. Really, when you get just the seed of something going, even if you didn't even want to plant a seed that big, it takes off by itself a lot of the time.
And I will say, you'll go through the stages of, I am an artiste and I will create when I am ready. And I did that for years. I remember my mother yelling at me because I was practicing drums too late. I was like, but I can do it now. Like, this is when I'm going to create. And the same thing with writing, to the point where I realized that that's just a lot of BS and I can create on command. But it took a long time to get there. If somebody were to say like, hey, you're gonna have to write a short fiction story right now, and I need it done tomorrow, I could probably pump it out. But I wasn't there even 5 years ago. And it is a step-by-step process.
Desire.
Anybody else?
Mark, Nathan?
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome.
A big thank you to for James tonight and for everyone.